Good morning, everyone. We're running a little bit late, but I'd like to start now. Or I need to start now, or else they're going to kick me off the stage, I guess. So it's a bit of a strange setting. I don't know where to look. That's a bit different. As a teacher, you're always in the front of the classroom. But I guess that's also flipping the system as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the journey that I've made as a teacher. I still am a teacher. And, well, a couple of years ago, I imagined what an ideal school could look like, what an ideal educational system could look like, and why it wasn't there. And that's sort of like began a journey, and that's why I'm here, I guess, also now in Dubai and also in lots of other places, trying to change how we run schools, what our role as teachers are, and I think also how we can change society as a whole. And I think we've touched upon some really important things that other people could learn from as well. I always like to start by introducing myself with this picture. This is my ideal teacher. It's from a game. It's from a long time ago. I used to play games quite a bit when I was a teenager. Does anybody know what this is? I always hear a transformer a lot, but it is sort of like a Doom kind of game. It's an end-of-level boss. And if you're finishing a game, at the end of the game you get this huge monster, and you're good enough, you've acquired all the skills to defeat the end-of-level boss. So it's sort of like the thing that I want my students to achieve as well. And it's also, games are sort of like a sandbox in which you can operate freely. And within that system you have lots of freedom, but you always have to acquire all these new skills to defeat the game. And for me, it's a really important lesson for education. And at the same time, an end-of-level boss, and in Dutch is called eindbaas, is also a term of respect for students. And it's a real end-of-level boss. It's echt de eindbaas, is what they say in the Netherlands. And I think teachers should regard themselves like that as well, and they should be regarded by society as end-of-level bosses. But the opposite was true. So I started teaching at my school, my current school, 7 years ago, a progressive school. As you can see, it's sort of like it's differently built up than most schools. You can see me there teaching through video interaction in the weekends, helping students prepare for tests, using Twitter, but also just normal classroom instruction. I went there because I needed more space, more creativity, more flexibility, more collaboration with my colleagues, and I found it there. It's a really like open, collaborative, horizontal school, a teacher-powered school, so to speak. But the thing is, the government didn't understand, or the system itself held us back, and we were narrowing the curriculum down again. So we were starting to teach to the test more and more. So if the results weren't there, then it's easy to get dragged back into the system. And schools like us were closing down at that time as well. So I thought, well, so why is this happening, and what can I do to change this? And it was actually the students who convinced me, or at least woke me up, so to speak. So I was teaching there for only 3 months, and it was sixth form, so students were 18, and they were preparing for their exams. We were talking about education a lot, about exams, so what they were going to do afterwards, and also what kind of education they would like. And so, as teachers, we always tell our students, so, hey, you can change the world, and you can really make a difference. But then they said to me, so we're having this discussion, you're really dissatisfied with the way the system is going, the direction, so why aren't you doing something about it yourself? So they held up a mirror. And it was a really emotional moment because I didn't have an answer to that. So I was just going along with the system as well. And for me, that was really powerful, and it sort of like began sort of like a journey on discovery and networking, going outside of the school, talking to lots of different other teachers, networks, mostly progressive teachers at that time. But a couple of years ago, it was about 3.5 years ago, I met another teacher online. So Twitter is a really powerful medium. And he's a really traditional teacher. He's also giving classes in behavior management. So we're like two opposites in the educational sphere, two worldviews and what education could be like. But what we both found, I think, was that we both recognized each other as professionals, or that we're both good teachers and that it's okay to have different worldviews, but as teachers that we have the expertise to actually be part of the whole educational system, have a say within the whole educational system. So we embarked on sort of like a journey, and we decided to edit a book. It's called The Alternative, Het Alternatief. And we just asked loads of people to contribute, but also about 50% of the book should be written by teachers. If you look at all these educational books, most of them are written by researchers, and they're really, can be really inspirational. Andy Hargreaves, Michael Fullan, you name it. But teachers themselves are not usually asked to contribute to these kind of books. So sort of like a symbol, we said, well, 50% of the teachers should do this. And it became a really powerful symbol. We just networked a lot, we asked around a lot, we mentioned it to politicians, we asked their feedback, the inspectorate, you name it. So when the book came out, politicians knew that it was coming. They really liked what they were reading. And only 2 weeks afterwards, it was mentioned in Parliament. So there were parliamentarians asking, why aren't we doing this? So why aren't we creating this new kind of paradigm? Why are we continuing these routes, which we know doesn't work? And that really, I think it was part of a changing conversation. There was already lots of people working on this, but it sort of like focused the direction, I think, of the educational debate. And we made some really concrete recommendations, conclusions on what we could do, and one of them was just close down the inspectorate because we want to get some attention. That hasn't happened yet, and I don't think it will, but the inspectorate is changing a lot as well, and I'll get to that in a minute. So the perception of teachers, I think, is changing a little bit. It's just starting, but teachers taking ownership within their schools, within the whole school system, I think that will become sort of like the foundation of the Dutch educational system. And so this is what it used to be like. I don't know if you can see it. It's sort of like this Byzantine system of educational, we created sort of like a monster where nobody has really grip on what's going on. And there's school autonomy, but teachers don't have a say within the school. There's the inspectorate, there's these different stakeholders on the boards. So the teachers aren't there, and all these value-added metrics, all these standardized testing. As a teacher, I love testing. I think testing is, as a teacher, you need to test, but they should be formative. And what we've created in the Netherlands, for example, is a system where everything was incentivized. Everything had punitive measures attached to it. And that really narrowed down the curriculum a lot. And of course, there's this catch-all phrase called neoliberalism. But what it meant is that the teachers weren't taking responsibility for the children they were teaching anymore. And so we had a conversation in the classroom, I still think, and amongst teachers themselves. So here's a child that gets a 5.4, and that's just insufficient in the Dutch system. And no conversation what that grade actually means and how the child actually gets there. And he should just go to a lower level. And as a teacher, that's the worst thing you could do. You're not taking your responsibility. And we've outsourced that to numbers, grades, you name it, and all incentivized through big data sheets. And it was in 2012, and we were heading in the direction of the United States, I guess. And lots of people were thinking, well, we're not going there. So as teachers, we can't let that happen. And it's also part of this global, everybody of course knows Basie Solberg's GERM, the Global Education Reform Movement. And we were thinking we should, as teachers, take sort of a global responsibility. That's a big, hairy goal. But I think we should do that if we really want to stop these measures entering our profession again. So what was happening in the Netherlands, I think we called it voluntary slavery. That was the main conclusion of the book. So we sort of like held up a mirror to ourselves. So why have we, as well-trained professionals, talking about change and also entering education and being a teacher because you want to change the world? I think that's one of the most driving forces that we have. How have we allowed this to happen, this system to come into being? So if we don't change our mindset ourselves, or if we don't think we can change the world, or we don't think we can have influence within the educational system, we'll always be one step behind and we'll allow it to happen. And the worst thing on this, I think, is that it sets a really, really bad example for our students. They're modeling our behavior, and they're not changing the world. They don't think they have agency to do it. And I think if we really want to change the system, teachers should be, so we also radically said, well, we need to flip the whole system, and teachers should be at the top. And every morning, our Secretary of Education should set up, so what do my teachers need? How can I support them? And that's a really logical idea, but it's also a radical idea. And it also has really practical implications. And I also think there's an urgency there for more teacher agency. Fritz talked about it yesterday, but the thing is that there's continuing automation, and some people are saying, well, then we need more MOOCs, and we need to sort of more like flexible online technology. I don't think that's the answer at all. And so we're creating a more standardized and digital world. Everything's being automated. So the only thing that makes us the added value of us as humans is our humanity. And the only thing you can teach that, the only way you can teach that is through a relationship that you build up with the student. That's the essence of good education. So we don't need more MOOCs, but we need more and better teachers. Then also, to really arrive there, we sort of, after 3 months when we published the Dutch book and started lobbying and putting these policies into place, we also thought, well, one of the conclusions was we need to have more international interaction. The individual classroom teacher should be connected to global policy. And other countries should strive for these kind of reforms as well. So we approached Education International. It's sort of like the Federation of Unions. They knew what we were doing. And they helped us create this new book, Flip the System, and sort of like translated the Dutch system to sort of like an international guideline of what it could look like. And again, Andy Hargreaves and Pasi Solberg and some other people, again, contributed to the whole idea. And it became sort of like sort of like a rallying cry. So now there are Flip the Systems springing up in the UK. There's going to be an Australian version. So if you want to contribute to that, please do. And I'll talk a little bit about it. It's about we all want to have kids that are ethical, empathic, that can change the world, have lots of knowledge to do it, and it means that they have agency. But if you don't have teacher agency, and that's a model by Mark Priestley, is if you don't have teachers who know how to operate in this world, that they have a systemic view of what's going on from a global policy level downright to the classroom, we're never going to have those kinds of changes that we need. So what we think is that this is like should be the sort of like the goal for policymakers to strive for, teacher agency, but it has really profound implications of what the education system should look like. So what 6 ideas, guidelines where we should work on. First one is trust, because the other system, the one we were coming from, was distrust. And all the accountability measures was constantly giving us a message, we don't trust what you're doing. We don't think you're professional enough. So you should make that trust actionable. And this is a really good research done by Linda Darling-Hammond on trust within schools. You can make it actionable. The pink one is what school leaders and administrators were saying. Are you giving sort of like, do you have distributed leadership within your schools? The red ones are the teachers, and they're sort of like, the average is a gap of about 30%. That's huge. So the teachers are not experiencing this. And in the UK, it's about 50%. They're really, I think they're really heading in the wrong direction. So that's all. You can translate that also into how schools should be run. In the United States, there's a really wonderful foundation called Teacher-Powered Schools, also by the Center of Teacher Quality, CTQ. And they have sort of like made of like a scale on how much say a teacher has within a school. You can make that sort of, do you have curriculum responsibility? Do you have financial responsibility? And there are even teacher cooperatives, completely teacher-run schools. They elect their own principal, and it's hard work, but the thing behind it is you have to take responsibility for that child. And all the resources that you have at your disposal are tailored to that individual child. A teacher can't say anymore, it's not my problem, it's a system, it's completely your own responsibility. So what they've been showing us, and that's really inspired us at my own school as well, what they've been doing, you can put that into practice as well. There's loads of these kinds of examples all around the world. We should talk about the purpose of education again, and I think that's one of the discussions that comes up later or now. And for me, one of the most influential thinkers at this moment is Gert Biesta. He wrote a book, The Beautiful Risk of Education, and that's the essence, I think, of what we're doing in education. It can't be standardized. It's about human beings. It's about all this really complex system that we work in. And that means that you're always, in every minute, every interaction you take with a student, is taking this risk, this beautiful risk, and trying to see what comes out there of this individual child. And he put it really nicely into a really good model, I think. So what is education for? I don't think you can see it, but the yellow one is qualification. And that's this thing we all agree upon. So all the skills that you need for a job, the diploma, it also ensures equity within an educational system. But the other two, socialization, so the norms, the culture, citizenship, actual citizenship, that was being pushed out of our system, or it was protocolized in some form. And the other one is subjectification. That's the individual child allowed to come into being. And that part has been, in a lot of schools at least, was completely gone. I'm exaggerating maybe a little bit, but for me, that was why I started to work at UNIC. So we always should strive for some kind of balance, and we should agree upon that as a community, as a school community, parents, students, teachers, school leadership. We should agree upon this, and the outcome will always be different because the circumstances are always different. And that's what if you want to have innovation, you have to think about purpose. So if you stand for nothing, you will fall for anything. And that's sort of like, that's what happened to teachers. They weren't thinking about education anymore. They were thinking in grades. This one, professional honor, is one of the most important ones, I think. There's a professional honor movement within in the Dutch system. It's also in healthcare. It's also starting up in police, and it's all connected to one another. It's a really old idea, but I think it's really important in the 21st century. I think democratic professionalism and a profession organizing itself and also taking an active stance on all levels of policy is sort of like a re-engagement or reinvigoration of democracy again. And as teachers, we are so badly organized. There are so many different small organizations. We think differently about education, but we should strive to be beyond that. So what we did, or what the unions did 10 years ago in the Netherlands, is create a teacher cooperative. And it's still into being, and it will take another 10 years, maybe another 15 years to really make it work. But it has allowed us to speak with one voice, and it allows the government to give more responsibility to the profession itself. And all the teacher organizations are working within that sphere and disagreeing with one another, but they can speak with one voice, and we can actually have discretionary powers within the educational system. So that's also a really interesting, but also I think really important and maybe even necessary way of making policy, especially in democratic countries like the Netherlands. Collaboration, that's the essence, I think, of good education, and all the OECD research from the last 2 or 3 years just supports that as well. And there are some really wonderful reports coming out written by Andrea Schleicher, and also was presented at the ISTP, the International Summit on the Teaching Profession, in Berlin, is crucial. And good, well-run schools are operating like this. This is a network model of High Tech High in San Francisco, one of the charter schools there. And you can see the nodes within that network are all like teacher leaders or non-positional teacher leaders. They are the actual heart of the school, and the principal and the school leadership is taking a step back, and the school starts to run itself. There's still school leadership, but it's supportive school leadership. And this is the essence of a good running school. And there's lots of research pointing towards that, and from my own experience, I couldn't do without it, without that support from my colleagues. And what you then have is sort of like a different form of accountability. You open up the classroom doors, you see this whiteboards hanging on the wall. That's how we work. The students see us working and discussing educational policy within the school, designing curriculum. We ask students to contribute to this as well. So opening up your classroom doors, doing that transparently, but this is supportive transparency. This is not a data sheet transparency. So the collective autonomy is taking responsibility instead of having someone else holding you accountable. And it's a really good quality system. It's a lot better than what we used to have. So from one to the next. And then support. I think most educational systems are systems of neglect, where teachers have been neglected a lot and not supported at all. So one of the things that you really should be doing is allowing that agency to develop amongst teachers. So we were stealing everything left and right from good practices from other countries. So there's this really wonderful thing in Ontario, the TLP, the Teacher Learning and Leadership Program. It's an innovation program for teachers, and it was working really well. and Lieberman is leading their project. And we just stole it and said, we want to have this really huge innovation fund, and there shouldn't be any administrator in between that. It's teachers saying, well, we think this is important, we want to explore this. So now it's a 5 million fund, and as teachers' teams, you can apply for a 75,000 euro grant, or maybe individually to about 5,000 euros. And there's lots of the scaling in between. And all these teachers that are applying for it are going in a direction we would never have imagined. But it's showing also what the demands are on a grassroots level. So now there's this, one of our colleagues who also wrote about standardized testing and accountability system and a new kind of inspectorate. And he was sort of like writing about, let's get rid of the inspectorate. But what he's been doing now with that grant is working with the inspectorate, 10 schools, of creating sort of like a horizontal accountability system. And they've got like the inspectorate went along with it, the Department of Education went along with it, but it's now teacher-led inspectorates. And it's a completely revolutionary idea within the Netherlands. And that's some kind of spillover we would never have imagined before starting this. So all these teachers that are entering this sphere of collaboration are then again doing their new stuff and creating their own little spaces again of change. And I think that's what's going on. And one of our, I think, next things that we should be doing is creating this, making it more formal, creating this really supported spaces. So there's lots of money going on in professional development by external people. I think we just should use that money to create all these spaces for teachers to collaborate in, taking on these roles, coaching, designing, curriculum design, research, you name it. And Singapore is leading the way on this, I think. And I think every country can use some of these design principles, I think, to actually make a system more teacher-led, just like in Singapore. And then lastly, and that's a really concrete thing, if you want to do all these things, it takes time. It takes loads of time. I'm working a lot and designing a lot within my school still. And Kai Min Cheng from Hong Kong said it really well. So when teachers are surviving, they're not focused on student learning. And it was really interesting to see that from people from Hong Kong and Singapore, how is it possible that you treat your teachers in this way in the West? You know that's not working, and still you're going in this direction. But now we completely changed that conversation, and now time is on the table. We're not there yet, but you can see that the politicians are listening, and that all these little laws coming out of Parliament are moving towards that direction. And this is a really good example. Just make it more practical. The yellow ones is teaching time, and this is mostly from the United States. This is like research done by the Center of Teacher Quality, Bernard Berry. And on the right-hand side, you can see more the Asian countries, how they are working, and they've like created teacher time every day to collaborate in. So less teaching means better teaching. And there's I think it's a contradictory thing for most people, but I'd rather teach one really good lesson than 3 mediocre ones and have students disengage with what I'm doing. And I think that's sort of like all these really practical things we should be striving for. This is happening all over the world. We know what's right, so then the thing is, why aren't we doing it? So we should create these spaces, also internationally, I think. And that's what we're striving for as well. That's why we're also using flipped system, but also creating sort of like a teacher leadership network with all these networks that are already there. And then slowly, I think, we won't have sort of like a set of ideas or a new guru telling us what to do. We'll be changing education ourselves. And this, for me, and I'm really worried about where we're going. We have a Trump as well, and he's really, really, really strong in the Netherlands. And you can see it happening all over the place. And I think, at least in the West, it's a form of political decay, and the system is failing us. So we should really reinvent the way we work. And that means active engagement, citizenship, and teachers engaging within the whole system is narrowing the gap between the government and its citizens again. And I think the education system is a perfect example, or at least if we don't do it in education, where else can we do it? And we're modeling that for our students. So it's sort of like an antidote to all these things that are going on, and to really make it from policy to individual change agents, teachers, students. This is the only way forward, I think. And it goes beyond creating good educational systems. It's about really creating a good, the society we want, I think, and what we should be striving for. And we always begin and end the books we write and the things we do with this quote. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? So we're the only ones who can change the world. Thank you.